College students, what is the dumbest thing you've heard a fellow student say? Not necessarily something they said, but my friend was in an online course, and they had to write a simple paragraph about themselves as a first assignment. Someone got caught plagiarizing. How does that happen? Who plagiarizes about themselves? Have no idea. The professor made a huge deal about it too. I'm guessing that they had to do something similar for another course, so they just copied and pasted it, which in my opinion takes more effort than writing from scratch. My favorite has got to be when a student read World War II as World War XI. Student: do rocks have DNA? Professor: no, rocks are not living. Student: then how do they reproduce? How is there not only just one rock? This was a 300 level genetics class. A friend of mine moved into a new place at the start of his second year and threw a big house party to celebrate. It was great. It was wild and fun was had. While nothing got broken, his living room got messed up quite a bit. Pillows all over the place, chair tipped over. I think someone made a fort out of pizza boxes. Anyway, I go around this dude's house about 5 months later, and the living room is largely in the same state I saw it last at the party. In fact, so was lots of the house. It had barely been cleaned. Mold was on a ton of their dishes, and there was a mushroom growing out of the wall in the bathroom. I asked him why the hell he hadn't tidied any of it up, and he said, "We figured we'd have another party again soon, so why bother cleaning up?" The other day I heard a girl giving a speech about nicotine addiction. This was supposed to be informative and have credible sources. I kid you not. I do not believe that cigarettes are addictive. I tried them once, and I am not addicted. I had to try very hard not to start laughing. A friend of mine told me that in his communication class, a girl once gave a speech on why football players don't need helmets. You could make the argument that helmets and large pads allow players to hit each other much harder and more recklessly. If they didn't wear helmets, the most dangerous tackles like spearing wouldn't happen. Rugby doesn't have helmets, and they have way fewer concussions. One time in class, a girl was doing a presentation where she described a man from Uganda as African American, and didn't understand why that wasn't right. A girl I knew studied abroad in Europe, and she kept on mentioning an African American she had a fling with. I asked if he was from the States, and she said no. He had a British accent. I said, well, that doesn't really make him African American. She called me a racist. In a literature class, girl: so all those Greek gods and goddesses, what happened to them? Professor confused: you mean in the story? Girl: no, like what happened to them? Professor: I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Girl: like why are they not around anymore? Did they all die? The whole class was just stunned into silence. The professor gave her a very vague answer like, well, that's open to your own interpretation. I could tell she was trying not to sound condescending. She handled that way better than I would have. I had a friend ask me if the IRS was going to come after him since he did not pay his internet bill for 3 months. It was in a math class when a teacher was trying to get a girl to understand that 1/3 is larger than 1/4, but she wasn't having any of it. According to her, 1/4 was larger because there are 4 quarters to make a whole and only 3 quarters to make 1, 2. So there are more quarters. More is larger, therefore a quarter is larger. Even when the teacher tore a piece of paper in 3 and another in 4, wrote 1/3 and 1/4 on the corresponding papers, threw everything away but 1/3 and 1/4, and asked her which was larger, she still went for the quarter. The teacher sat down, didn't say anything for a minute, and then continued class. That was the first time I'd ever witnessed someone giving up on a person like that. I seem to remember A&W advertised a third-pound burger in comparison to McDonald's quarter-pound burgers for the same price, but due to people thinking a third was smaller, no one bought them. A lot of people don't understand basic fractions. During an MBA marketing class, we had group projects where we basically had a set of data given to us to come up with a marketing plan. One group took the customer data and proudly averaged all of the customer zip codes to get the geographical center of their customer base. Later, in the professor's office, they argued when the professor told them it didn't work that way. The team leader said, well, that's just your opinion, and stomped out. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Zip codes do not correspond to geographic coordinates, so averaging them does nothing. All you get is an average of zip code numbers. I was about to graduate and move to Europe with my husband, my classmate. You'll be surprised when you get there. Europeans look American. You won't be able to tell a difference. Me: you should retake history. Still my favorite. This one occurred in the stacks at the University of Kentucky in the spring of 2014. Girl: I have no idea how I got chlamydia, but I didn't cheat on you. Boy. Bullcrap. You frickin' slept with so-and-so. Girl. No way. I must have gotten it from the bathroom at some random bar. Boy. You can get chlamydia from toilet seats? Girl. Duh, of course you can. Boy. Oh. Okay, I didn't know that. Ladies and gentlemen of Reddit, I present the future of our country. Boy, is he in for a surprise when she gets pregnant from the swimming pool. How many pages do I need to write for the 5-page paper? This isn't always true. My WR227, technical report writing, required for engineering, teacher back in the fall told us that we were only writing 13 pages in our 25-page report. The rest was filled with the table of contents, index, appendices, and other useless/useful crap. I thought Ben Franklin invented lightning. This was said during a class on Western civilization. He isn't Asian, he's from Japan. Student. Are Chinese people Asian? Professor. Yes. Are Asian people Chinese? Professor. Well, some, but not all. Student. How is that possible? Well, Asia is a continent, and China is a country on that continent. So Vietnamese people are Chinese? No, they're Asian, but not Chinese. How's that possible? Vietnam is a different country. Oh, okay, so they're the same as Koreans, in that they're both Asian and not Chinese, yeah. So just the Chinese aren't Asian? This hurt. It really, really hurt. The professor should have drawn a Venn diagram to easily illustrate it to the student. That way there could be a slight chance it could have spun his gears, since he might be the kind of person to understand concepts better visually. Had a kid in class who did not believe in science. Not a specific branch of science or any particular theory, just science in general. It was all just made up by the government. The thing about it though is that we were in school to become aircraft mechanics, and if you tried explaining the physics of flight to him, he would adamantly deny it. Luckily, he was kicked out for failing a drug test. As it is, I am already not comfortable flying knowing some of the people who went on to be employed by major airlines. Actually, a week ago, we had just gotten out of our final exam for the year, and this girl is making her way to the door. Before she even reaches it, she says to her friend, "Yeah, I had to copy a few parts of my book to reach the word count." You ever hear a record scratch in real life? And that 90s meme following it? That pretty much happened. The teacher called this girl up to the front and silently, without a word, began to go into the paper logs and saw that Turnitin had a 75% plagiarism rate. The girl I had a crush on copied her whole report for a semester project from Stack Overflow. It was so bad, 91% plagiarism rate, that the professor, who was lazy, hid it so that he wouldn't have to deal with the hassle of reporting her and gave her an A. And she thought no one knew, but pretty much everyone in our common circle knows. And she's now going to join a prestigious tech company in London while I'm still searching for a good job. Some days I do not know what to make of life. I'm never going to need to know this for my career. He was talking about Calculus 1 and he majors in mechanical engineering. He's technically not wrong, given that with that attitude, his major is certainly not going to end up as his career. Even still, maybe he'll spend the rest of his life as a drafter or a machinist or something. He could get an engineering job and not touch calculus very much at all. A friend of mine was taking apart a printer in the IT lab, and another friend turned to see him opening it up and yelled, "Don't drink the ink!" completely seriously, because that's how dumb he thought the first friend was, that he would immediately drink printer ink if given the chance. We were playing a drinking game. Someone correctly answers a question with Afghanistan. This girl laughs out loud and goes, "Afghanistan isn't a country." We all turned at once and laughed at her. If fish don't have lungs, how do they breathe? I'm a second-year biology student. Professor was demonstrating the need for quality checks, asked several students to measure a piece of paper that was normal printer paper sized. One kid was supposed to measure in inches, another was supposed to measure in centimeters. The kid who measured in centimeters said the paper was 108 centimeters long. Now, this is regular paper, 1 foot long on its longest day. This fellow did not even think twice before saying it was over a meter long. Nobody even picked up on this until it was remeasured for a quality check. Mind-blowing. He probably confused length with the perimeter. One girl asked if she went $300 over her credit limit, if she would have to pay it back. No, it's free money. On the first day of freshman year, I sat down in a classroom after listening to a lecture about evolution. The girl who sat down next to me had also been in the previous lecture. She said to me that lecture was so weird because I don't believe in evolution. Like, I just don't. This was in an honors college course. I later asked the girl what she was majoring in. It was biology. Two girls, business majors, very stereotypy, around 2010. We should start a website where anyone can sign up and simply pay a fee to charge their laptops over the internet. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. No mention of peripherals, so I can only assume the website hacks into the router you're connected to, turns it into a Tesla coil, and arcs a surge of electricity from the device to your laptop battery. Teacher. We are on chapter 6 now. Says it verbally and then proceeds to write it on the board. 10 seconds later. Student 1. What chapter are we on? Teacher. We are on chapter 6. Student 2, who sits right next to student 1. Are we on chapter 6 now? Teacher with a confused face. Yes? Never underestimate a student's ability to just not. Me. What's your major? Guy. It was aerospace engineering. Me. Whoa, that's cool. But what do you mean was? Guy. I'm on academic probation with the university because my GPA is too low, so I'm switching majors. Me. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. What are you switching to? Guy. Religious studies. I can get a job as a pastor. Me. Alright, so you are big into church? Guy. No, I rarely go, but I can worry about that later. This is the perfect example of what happens when you tell teenagers that everybody needs to go to college. Teacher. Name a country beginning with E. Classmate. Euthanasia? For reference, I live in England. So at university, I got quite involved with the radio station and the campus nightclub. This connection led me to putting on a lot of concert/club nights for the radio station at the nightclub, and I've had a few people wanting to get involved. One always sticks out. A friend of mine has the idea that he's going to raise £1 million to build a school in Africa. I can't remember precisely what part of Africa, but I think it was going to be in a part where you can build a decent school for a lot less than £1 million. I was the man he was approached to partner with him. We had a venue that held 1,600 people, so you can do your own maths on how much we'd need to get out of each attendee. Students on limited funds, who already had 3 regular nightclubs every week to choose from, in order to hit his target, and that's ignoring the litany of overheads that such an event would incur. As the conversation wore on, it became clear that he needed me to do near enough of everything. His role was more of a visionary, a figurehead, and someone to invite a lot of people to a Facebook event. To his credit, he had clout there. But all of that, I suppose I can overlook this as a result of eagerness, ambition, and naivety. What really made my head hit the desk was when, after giving me this whole pitch, he says, "The first thing we need to think about is celebrities." It all unraveled at that moment. I realized that his interest in building a school in Africa was only a portion of his motivation. The big driving force was that he wanted to meet Beyoncé, and that I was supposed to somehow organize it. Guess what? That event never happened. We shouldn't have to vaccinate men for HPV because it doesn't hurt them. I actually had this argument with a peer and a professor. They still didn't understand it in the end. We are all scientists. But even if it didn't increase the risk of getting cancer in men, wouldn't it make sense to stop transmission to women by vaccinating men? What about the logic is unclear. Seems like they were thinking about it theoretically rather than realistically. Sure, if you vaccinate 100% of women, you wouldn't necessarily need to vaccinate men. Realistically, vaccinating men will reduce cases in women much faster than vaccinating women alone. And in the long run, perhaps even wipe out HPV altogether. But I'm pretty sure HPV can increase cancer risk in men too, so their argument is flawed from the start. I grade the homework for an astronomy class. One time, there was a question asking which superior planets farther from the sun than Earth, were visible at midnight at that time. One student said, "Sun, it is the brightest planet." I had to stop grading for a bit because I couldn't stop laughing. The word planet comes from the Greek word meaning wanderers, and used to refer to all the objects that moved relative to the stars behind them, the sun and the moon included. The more you know. First week of college, I watched this kid cut in line and get confronted by his peers. His response was, "As far as I'm concerned, I'm more attractive than you." That is so stupid that it's brilliant. You are accused of embezzling $10 million from the company pension fund. Do you have anything to say in your defense? As far as I'm concerned, I'm more attractive than you. Case dismissed. I always thought that Gatorade was a scam. Turns out it has electrolytes and stuff that you need when you're dehydrated. It's got what plants crave. I love breast cancer because it makes everything pink. This one is the absolute dumbest I've read so far. If you cheat on your girl once a month for a year, you're still 97% faithful. Math checks out. In an ethics class, a girl decked out in a horrible clash of designer name brands on every article of clothing and personal possession raised her hand and said, "The difference between rich people and poor people is that rich people know how to say thank you." We were discussing the differences between wealthy and poverty level treatment in a courtroom. Also, in a final exam for a criminal procedure class, there was a typo. I forget what it said, but it was supposed to say mortal, as in mortal wound. Everyone pretty much made out what it was supposed to say through the context of the sentence. Except this one girl. She went up to ask the teacher what the misspelled word meant, and he announced to the class the correct spelling. She stood there and asked him what mortal meant. He just looked at her and said in the dead silence of a final exam, "You're a fourth-year criminal justice major in a criminal procedures class. I am not going to explain to you what a mortal wound is." I met someone my freshman year who, for the life of him, could not memorize the order of the months. My favorite happened just last week in my astronomy class. Someone else in the class had asked the professor if Pluto would be considered a planet again soon, and he explained that they were skirting around a classification that would make 100 things in our solar system a planet. And someone from the back of the class speaks up and says, "Freaking liberals wanting to include everyone." Excuse me? It was so shocking all I could do was laugh. Also, not a dumb saying, just a dumb action. This guy always sat in the front row. Also, constantly 20 minutes late, and proceeded to take photos of every slide of the PowerPoints, despite every single thing being online, while he also had a laptop in front of him that I saw him use 3 times all semester, twice for tests. I met a guy once that believed that homosexuality didn't exist. Not that he believes that gay marriage should be illegal, not that he thought it was immoral, not that he thought it was disgusting, not that he was homophobic. He really just thinks that homosexuality or anything other than heterosexuality is non-existent. I couldn't argue with him because I didn't know what to argue. I was an English major, so a lot of my classes involved writing papers. Most of the professors would set deadlines when they were due that were outside of class hours. We had one paper that was due before 12 a.m., you know, like midnight, which you should know by the time that you get to college. This one girl showed up the next day to class and tried to hand in her paper. The professor explained that she was going to be marked down because it was late. "What do you mean it's late? You needed to have it in before 12, but it's only 10 right now. There's still 2 hours before 12 a.m. Even after he explained, she still had an attitude and ended with, "Well, you should say 12 at night, that way everyone would know." This is the reason my entire department makes anything due online at either class time or 11:59 p.m. Yeah, I got a 1.7 GPA! I got a 2.9 and I thought that was bad. Man, you have such a big computer. That thing's gotta take up 6 Wi-Fis. A girl in my music appreciation class once called a cello a guitar. Not a student anymore, but a girl in my dorm asked me, "So, is Gandhi a real person or a character in a cartoon?" "He is? How can you know he's real?" Facepalms. Facepalms for everyone. My name is Brittany. I joined astronomy because I want to learn about the galaxies. My favorite things include volunteering, coffee, and really old animated movies like The Lion King and The Little Mermaid. One of my first classes after separating from the Navy. 6 deployments and 2 wars later. No one tells you how insufferably bad college kids will be. I didn't realize getting cash back wasn't free money. I really made my parents mad. I once had an argument with one of my flatmates because she genuinely thinks that French people think in English and that they just translate that into French before they speak. Apparently everyone thinks in English, even people who don't speak it. Went to a southern university, and my first roommate told me out of nowhere she didn't think the South should have been made to give up their slaves. When I just turned and stared at her in disbelief, I had been doing something on my computer. She said, "I know slavery was wrong, but that was their livelihood." She basically went on about how it destroyed the South, and after a while I gave up trying to talk sense into her. I mean, the loss of slaves did do a number on the South's economy, but that's not the point. Like child labor, 12-hour days, no minimum wages, and no safety standards led to a higher profit margin during the Industrial Revolution. Humans are more important than money. Teacher: "All right, Tom, why don't you begin the reading?" Tom: "Okay, this is F. Scott Fitzgerald by The Great Gatsby. Chapter 1. Professor here. Student was upset that I didn't send him an email reminding him his homework was due. I apologized and asked if there was anything else I could do for him. Maybe his laundry, grocery shopping, etc. He stormed out of the classroom. Other students laughed. Cigarettes aren't addicting. I smoke them all the time. Is the nitrogen used to grow this broccoli cruelty-free? This is organic, grass-fed, non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free nitrogen. What's 7 divided by 2? Needless to say, she failed basic algebra and dropped out a semester later. First day of World War II class, girl. So did the Germans win the war? Did someone tell her the winner on the first day? Freaking spoilers, man. No point in going to the rest of the class now. Really late to the party, but I've got a decent one. A girl at a party was wearing a nice watch that totally matched her outfit. I commented and said, "Nice watch. Can you tell me what time it is?" She proceeds to pull her cell phone out of her purse and say, "It's 10. When I asked her why she didn't just look at her watch, she said, "It's a watch. It doesn't tell time." Dead freaking serious. I cheersed her and laughed my way to the balcony. A girl in my English class wrote that legalizing gay marriage would create 800 million new jobs in the United States. Before class started, a few of us were talking about various states we had been to. One mentioned Alaska being attached to Canada. This prompted a girl to chime in that Alaska is an island. She apparently thought that Alaska and Hawaii were located at the southwest corner of the US, like they are portrayed in the maps that just show the 50 states. My friend thought Uganda was a music festival. A few weeks ago, I overheard a girl on the phone on campus say, "I don't know why my dad is so mad at me. He's the one who keeps putting money in my account. I can't help that I spend it. It's so unfair." I was an exchange student from the Netherlands in the US a couple years ago. A girl comes up to me to ask if we have grass in my country and then asks if the Netherlands is a town in Germany. I had a girl interrupt the professor mid-lecture to ask if dragons are real. It was an archaeology lecture. This was my first day of anatomy, sophomore year. Keep in mind that a prerequisite bio class was needed to take this class. Professor: "Okay, can anyone tell me what organic means?" Someone's hand shoots up. Organic means there aren't any preservatives or additives, so the tissue is pure, like in nature. This person did not last long in that class. Doing a presentation on the moon landing and they had pictures of Lance Armstrong on there, not Neil. In the chemistry lecture, I don't believe in vitamin D deficiency. Some kid in one of my lectures around Thanksgiving goes, "Wait, there are turkeys, like, in the wild? Like naturally occurring?" Naturally occurring. As a girl from rural western Pennsylvania, this was the funniest thing I'd heard in a while. A classmate once explained to me that our country had failed to fulfill its societal obligation to him by not providing him with a career for his previously earned degree, which was history. Final year neuropsychology module, but we only use 10% of our brains. Shudder. That person was speaking from experience. I'm a vegan, while holding a drink made mostly of cream and while wearing a leather purse and boots. This took me a while to believe, and I was there when it was said. The girl in class didn't know who Khrushchev was. Someone made fun of her and asked, "Well, do you know who Hitler was?" She answered meekly, "Well, yeah, he was the leader of the Jews." She didn't understand why everyone started laughing. I almost regret sleeping with her. Almost regret. You, sir, have won. Vietnam is a country? I thought it was a war. That made the whole lecture just completely go silent. Are unicorns endangered or extinct? I mean, I know they're not really around anymore, but which is it? Once in my psych class, a woman stood up who was in a small group, asked the lecturer if 2 minutes was the same as 120 seconds because her group wasn't able to do the required test because they spent the 2 minutes arguing about how many seconds it was. These were fourth-year university students. "Oh, you're from England? What did you speak back there? Your English is really good. Why didn't Christopher Columbus just fly to America?" I also once convinced the same girl that 6 are axe-wielding cannibals who worship orangutans, and she put it as a dot point in her final presentation. This girl put her hand up in science class and asked the teacher if traffic lights were black and white in the old days. The worst part was the fact that she made me second-guess myself for a brief moment. The sun isn't a star, stupid, it's a sun. Why can't you swim under Hawaii? She wasn't joking. Guy: Are you a fan of Bon Jovi? Girl: Sorry, I don't like Italian food. Someone ordered water with no ice because it has fewer calories. Why can't poor people just buy themselves out of poverty? In economics class, a girl said, "I didn't know the wood was made out of trees," and she was serious. She said some other dumb crap too, but that was the only one I remember and later ended up dropping out. In a grad-level EU studies class that cross-listed with the law school, one of the law students, in response to the question of how to encourage countries like China to pollute less, said, and I kid you not, maybe the EU should pollute more, then China would feel bad about it. Definitely when a girl who wore Halloween costume fairy wings to class, go figure, stormed out of the class never to be seen again when the rest of the class informed her that The Lord of the Rings was not in fact a true story. I was just out of a class and walking out of the building in a large group. A guy at the front opens the door and holds it open behind him so the girl behind him doesn't get hit in the face. Her response to this was, "I have a boyfriend." The guy started killing himself laughing and now it's a meme at our uni. People are dumb. There is a story like that in Italy. Guy, do you have an eraser? Girl, I have a boyfriend. Guy, if he can erase pencils, that works too. Well, we have kosher meat, don't we? A girl in my political science class defending the death penalty. In a paleontology course, upon hearing Stegosaurus had a neural clump towards its butt that acted as a second brain, did the two brains ever fight each other for control of the body? Let's be real here. That question is rad enough in concept. I thought the sky was blue because it reflected off the ocean. This was 13 years ago and I'll never forget it. To be fair, I remember being taught this back in elementary school. Actually, I remember my 6th grade science teacher explaining it to us. Philosophy class, during a lecture on inductive reasoning. Some guy asks how it's different from his induction oven at home. He's either an idiot or the greatest philosopher of all time. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a quote to share, please do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!